No, it's so cold down here. MCAT office hours. It is December 2nd, 2025. I can't believe time is flying. Petros Manasi, current expert at Medical School HQ. You are VP of Test Prep and Tutoring, 25 plus years of experience in the pre-med and MCAT world. How you doing, my friend?
I'm good. I'm also a little bit baffled that it is already December. So we'll see. So I guess I shouldn't say I'm going to do something next month. I can now say I'm going to do something next year.
Yeah, next year. Yeah. See you next year.
Yeah, exactly, right?
Yeah, that's what all cool kids do. My name is Dr. Ryan Gray, founder of Medical School Headquarters, host of the Pre-Med Years podcast, all that good stuff. So we're here to answer your questions for the next 53 minutes or so. Let's round it down to 50. All about the MCAT. So if you have questions about the MCAT, let us know. Petros, you've been in this MCAT space for a long time. I corrected someone on TikTok the other day. Overall, it was a good video, but the person started off the video going, like getting into medical school is so hard. How do I deal with all this stuff? Or how do students deal with it? This person was already in medical school, maybe a resident. And the first thing they brought up was, the MCAT, you have to work 90% harder than everyone to get the 90th percentile because the test is curved. And I'm like, no, it's not curved. Fake news. I'm like, come on, you can't lead with just complete factual inaccuracy, which at the end of the day is going to freak students out. So I just want to start with that. Number one, how often do you hear, the MCAT's curves, therefore it's harder?
I hear it all the time, and then I hear the biggest myth or the biggest lie that I hear is, or maybe urban legend, more the correct term. Yeah. And students say, I heard that the scores were low in insert the name of a test date or insert a month, because that's when more was harder that day. Right. Yeah. More people were recently finished their coursework. So they were smarter. So everybody did really well that day. So it's harder. It's like, no, that's not how it works. Right.
I heard that one just recently for the first time.
Right. Yeah. There was this one instance this past spring where I actually heard from a parent that said, well, my child's score was low and a friend's child's score was also low, but they both took it on the same day. And so, that must have been a really hard exam that day. And I was like, no, that's not how it works. Like just to be clear, there will be variations as far as perceived difficulty on any given administration of the MCAT. I mean, you and I can literally be sitting next to each other at the testing center, and we're not going to necessarily get the same questions, right? In fact, we probably won't get the same questions in the same order as far as the actual day of the exam is concerned. But there might be this perceived, it was more difficult, it was less difficult. When they're figuring out the scores, they're comparing against the previous 3 years worth of test takers, right? Like that's what we refer to as the standardization. So there are harder versions or harder questions, easier, but it all kind of works itself out, and you're all measured against the exact same standard. So that's the important thing to keep in mind. What we do know is that you need to prepare for the exam, right? Like this is not an exam that you can just show up to one day and take.
Although if you go onto Reddit, there's always that person. I studied for 2 weeks and got a 525. Right?
Yep. I've spoken to a couple students who are like, I'm just going to study for a week during spring break. And I'm like, and what are you going to do before spring break? Well, that's going to be my study period for them. I'm like, okay, good luck. And here's some advice for you, right? Is the, and then they change their mind after I say that. But it's that misconception that this exam you can just go and take. You have to prepare for it, but it's not about, I've been having a lot of these conversations just this last couple of weeks. It's not just about the amount of time or, I got to finish my content review. Like I hear that way too many times. I got to do my content review, or I've done my content review and I don't see my score improving. It's not about doing one thing. And it's also like, even if you do your content review, there's effective content review and there's ineffective content review, just like anything else in life, right? Like I can do things efficiently and I can do things inefficiently. I can do things effectively and I can do things ineffectively. So it's about, building out a structure and making sure that you're tackling the areas that are of concern to you, but really building the skills, right? You'll never see the questions that you practice with on the actual exam, but you will see questions that are very similar, if not identical, as far as structure and skill set required in order to be able to answer those questions and answer those questions correctly. And then it's a matter of getting good at taking the test. I mean, just like anything else. And getting good at something doesn't mean it's not enough to say, I'm just going to do it a lot and I'll get really good at it. I mean, I spoke to one person, I won't say when, but it was recent, whose plan was to take 15 full-length exams. And I said, well, let's do everyone a favor. Let's do yourself a favor. You don't need to take 15 full-length exams. Like that's not an efficient use of your time. Let's rethink this. And it wasn't 15 exams over a period of like 2 years. It was 15 exams over a period of a very short amount of time. So it's important to kind of get the facts straight and make sure that you're looking at what you need to be looking at.
How many exams do you recommend?
I mean, 5 to 6 that's a lot. Like it's, there's kind of this point of diminishing returns. But it's, again, I will put this caveat on there. It's not just 5 or 6 exams. It's, 5 or 6 exams with a thorough review of the exam and then time to go through the concepts, the question types, right? Literally using the exam as your output in terms of, okay, here's what I need to be going and doing next, right? Using the performance on the exam, not the score. And I say this a lot, and I'll say this always. When you take a full-length exam, yes, the score is there. That's an indicator of how you performed. But the real value in taking the full-length exams is getting the practice and then figuring out, why did you get certain questions right? Like, what did you do? How can you replicate that on other questions? Why did you get certain questions wrong, right? What were the mistakes that you made? How do you avoid those mistakes the next time when you see a similar question to it? And that's the learning. That's the value. The score will always follow. So it's, the score is, again, a representation of how you performed, but really the fastest way to get a higher MCAT score is to get more questions right. So that's true, not just on the MCAT, it's true with anything, right? Like, wait, I just, right, that's not
if only it were that easy.
Yeah.
Get more questions, right? What do you think, just generally speaking, is the biggest thing that holds students back from getting more questions right?
I think, it's breaking old habits, to be frank. It's falling. There is a natural tendency. I'll kind of go into a little bit of a tangent here, but it all connects to the MCAT. There is a natural tendency that we have as human beings to default back to our old habits when we're under stressful situations, right? This has been studied. They'll do this in business simulations. They'll do this in all sorts of different types of training, where you will deliberately create a series of stress factors to put people into a stress state, to force them to go into their old habits so that they can learn how to avoid falling back into their old habits. So when you're on the MCAT and you're in this stressful situation, it's really easy to fall back into those old habits and not be cognizant of what you should be actively thinking about and be aware of. Okay, for instance, I have a tendency to fall for the answer choice that is opposite of what I should be looking for. So if I'm cognizant of that fact, then I'm on my toes, right? I've got my spidey senses on. I'm on my toes, looking to see what I can be doing to avoid falling into those traps. So that's what oftentimes will hold students back, is kind of falling back into those old habits and not truly practicing and developing the new, more efficient habits that are necessary to execute on test day. And nerves plays a role in it sometimes. I mean, more oftentimes than not, where it's everything was going really well, and then I go and take the exam, and my score plummeted relative to how I was performing. Well, you have to be realistic. You have new factors that come into play. You're in a testing center that you've probably never been in before, right? The room is not your home. It's not your bedroom, or if you take your full length exams at the library, or you find a nice quiet place, you're not familiar with it. So something that I learned, this was a long time ago, but I learned when I took a psych class in college, was that the best way to perform well on your midterms and finals is to study for them in the actual room that the exam is going to be held in. This was from the psych professor. And I think she was playing with us, but it was pretty smart statement or whatever.
Practice like you play.
Right. Where I went to school, lecture halls were pretty much open all the time. Mm-hmm. And I will swear that the night before the midterm, half the class was in the lecture hall studying. and I don't know if she did that deliberately or was like secretly watching to see if everybody showed up, to that lecture hall. But that's that. So we can't do that with the MCAT is where I'm going with, right? Like you can't go to the testing center and say, hey, let me study in here, but you can try to replicate it as best as possible. So,
yeah. Okay. Awesome. As a reminder, we're here to answer your questions. So if you have any, go over to YouTube is where we can pull them easier. If you're watching on Instagram, we can pull them from there too. But ask your questions. Petros, I know you have a slide deck here. We've been doing some questions and breaking down how to answer questions. What do we got on deck today?
Well, we've kind of gone through the cycle as far as the 4 sections. So we're back at Chem Phys. So we're going to look at some acid-base chemistry, because they love asking stuff about acids and bases and titrations and all that fun stuff. So that's what you got to be on your tippy toes about today. So this is that's what we got. We always look at this slide just as a reminder. The parallel for the MCAT is a parallel to medicine. So physicians are taking their prior knowledge, they're getting new information from patients to make a diagnosis. On the MCAT, you're taking your prior content knowledge, getting new information from the passages and from the questions to reason out an answer choice, which is effectively the diagnosis. So that is the job and the task at hand. That is the parallel that this has to medical school and to the practice of medicine. So it's not just a silly exam that's out there. There is a purpose to it as far as its existence is concerned. So really what we have to look at here in terms of acids and bases is this notion that strength matters. And you'll see what I mean by this here in a minute. Continuing our theme of AI generated cat images, here is ours for today. So we have a big cat, big MCAT, and a small MCAT, and they are fighting with each other. You'll see the relevance to that here in a second as well. So here's the question. You've got 25 milliliter aqueous sample of a monoprotic weak acid, HA, of unknown concentration, is titrated with 0.1 molar NaOH. When exactly 12.5 milliliters of NaOH solution has been added, the pH of the reaction mixture is 4.8. Assuming ideal solution behavior, what was the initial concentration of the acid in the sample? So they are not asking you for pH. They are asking you for the actual molarity, right? So big M, big capital M means molarity. So molarity, of course, is moles over liter. We need moles over liters, and we need to know that. But the first thing that we want to do with a question like this, and this is kind of a little top tip for you as far as picking up time, picking up speed, as far as when you're previewing questions and figuring out your plan of attack, is you look at the answer choices and you've got nothing but numbers. So anytime you've got nothing but numbers in the answer choices, there's a 95% chance that you are going to be doing a calculation, or you're going to need to do a calculation in order to be able to solve the problem. Sometimes you don't have to do the calculation, and there are certain scenarios, maybe not necessarily this one here, that you can get away without doing the calculation. But if you're seeing numbers in the answer choices, you are solving some out. But they've given you some clues. And the first big clue that they've given you, which is important, is that it's a monoprotic weak acid. Monoprotic, of course, meaning that it will donate one proton as far as its dissociation is concerned, as opposed to a polyprotic, which will donate more than one. So there's, diprotics, triprotics, but in this case here, it's a monoprotic, so it's giving up one. We are also given some numbers in terms of 25 milliliters of the acid, 12.5 milliliters of the sodium hydroxide solution. So that's great. We know the concentration of the sodium hydroxide, so that's good information for us to have. If we have concentration of the sodium hydroxide and we have the volume of the sodium hydroxide, we also have a third piece of information, which is we can actually solve for the number of moles of sodium hydroxide. So while they haven't explicitly told us how many moles of sodium hydroxide there are, they have implicitly told us. That is the math that we are going to have to do. But the big key word that they gave us, since they didn't actually give us the name of the acid, it doesn't matter that they didn't give us the name of the acid, is that it's a weak acid. So that's important because when you are pairing up acids and bases, the acid is going to either be weak or strong, and the base is either going to be weak or strong. So when you're looking at these situations and saying, okay, what does a strong base, what does a strong acid effectively mean? We have to understand kind of that relative connection between them. So here's how this all kind of works out in terms of our information. On the MCAT, they're not going to tell you when they give you the name of a chemical, they're not going to tell you whether it's strong or weak. But generally speaking, there are kind of key indicators of what makes something a strong acid or a strong base. And there is a somewhat defined list of what we would categorize as being the strong acids, and then everything else is weak. And then there are the strong bases, and everything else is considered to be a weak base. What defines weakness or strength is how willing the acid, if we're looking at acids, how willing the acid is to give off its proton. So, how likely is it that it's going to dissociate? So something like hydrochloric acid is considered a strong acid because the hydrogen is going to be totally fine on its own, basically because, well, I shouldn't use the word basically when we're talking about acids and bases, essentially because the chlorine is going to be fine on its own. So the chlorine goes and says, you know what, I'm going to give off the proton, and I'm going to be very happy on my own because now I've got that electron that came from that hydrogen. So I'm very stable. I don't necessarily need that proton to be with me. So it's very happy. So the proton is given off. Sodium hydroxide is in the same category, but this time for bases. So the sodium is going to very happily give off an electron to the hydroxide, to the OH. And so this is a situation in which we have a strong base. So in this case here, we have a weak acid and a strong base. Now, what's also important to remember, and this is a little bit of content, but it all comes together here in a second. When you're looking at a base and an acid that are coming together, if the weak acid doesn't really want to give off its proton, but the strong base really wants that proton, or in this case, the OH minus really wants that proton, it's going to be stronger. So it's the big cat in our picture. It's going to be stronger and can effectively pull off that proton. So even if the acid doesn't want to give it up, it's going to be given up because the acid's going to lose in the battle as far as the battle of the strengths of those two. So when we think about acids and bases, you basically have the different kind of setups. So you can have a strong base, which is going to deprotonate a weak acid because the weak acid's not really going to want to give up its proton, but the strong base is going to say, give it to me. If you have a strong base and a strong acid, that's like, match made in heaven effectively, because the base is saying, give me your proton, and the acid is saying, take my proton. The worst scenario is the weak base and the weak acid. where the weak base doesn't really want the proton, and the weak acid doesn't really want to give up the proton. So, you will never see a scenario in which you're putting a weak base and a weak acid. You will oftentimes see a scenario where you have a strong base and a weak acid, or a strong acid and a weak base. I didn't put that up on the screen, but that obviously can occur too, right? You can flip these things around as far as the orders are concerned. So, strong base, weak acid, base wants to take the proton, acid doesn't really want to give off the proton, but it's going to give off the proton. In this case here, we're going to be in a place where you've got your sodium hydroxide, definitely a strong base. Doesn't really matter what the strength is of the acid, but they told us that it was a weak acid. So we know we have the scenario of a strong base and a weak acid. So that's where we're at there as far as the content goes. But what you also need to remember, and so these are all things, and I'm hopefully illustrating to you kind of all the things that you have to remember, right? It's not just about knowing content. Everyone says, oh, it's going back to, earlier part of our conversation. I've reviewed my content. I know what pH is. I know what pKa is. It's not about knowing content. It's knowing about how all these things come together. So one of the things that you need to know when it comes to titrations is that the pH equals the pKa when you're at half equivalence, when you're at the half equivalence point. So in our scenario here, they told us the volume of sodium hydroxide, and they told us the concentration of the sodium hydroxide. So we can figure out the moles of the sodium hydroxide that we had at that point, that halfway point, right? So they say the moles of the sodium hydroxide that was added was 0.1 moles per liter times the volume of 0.0125 liters, or 125 milliliters, giving us 1.25 times 10 to the 3 moles. Since we were at the half equivalence point, that means we had half as much, meaning the initial moles of the acid is going to be 2 times where we're at this point here. So 2 times the 1.25 times 10 to the negative 3 is going to be 2.5 times 10 to the negative 3. So then you can figure out your initial moles of your acid. Since you have your initial moles of your acid, and then you were given your initial volume of your acid, you can then calculate the moles per liter, which is 2.5 times 10 to the negative 3 divided by 0.025 liters, which gives you 0.1 molar. Now, as far as quick calculations, quick maths on this, 2.5 times 10 to the negative 3 is being divided by 2.5 times 10 to the negative 2, which would effectively give you 1 times 10 to the negative 1, which is 0.1, right? So this is where some of the scientific notation and knowing your orders of 10 will definitely be beneficial to you in the long run. So we calculate our number, which is 0.1 molar. And then from that, we're able to say, okay, well, that ends up having to be answer choice B. So it's literally the same concentration as the concentration of the sodium hydroxide that we originally started with. That is coincidental as far as the numbers and as far as the values they gave us here. So don't think, oh, it's always going to be a one-to-one relationship. But at the same time, that's what it ends up being, and gives us the number. The last thing to to kind of remind ourselves of is, this was a lot of calculation for a relatively short problem. Going back to this notion, which I know we've talked about here in office hours, we definitely talked about it in events. You need to be on your toes when you're taking this exam, not just with the questions, but making sure that you are choosing the right questions to answer. If you see a question like this, on the surface, it can look, I don't want to say easy, but it can, can superficially look more, more simple. But kind of the layer beneath, right, the iceberg beneath, requires much more work to actually churn out the answer. So keep that in mind. Sometimes you can kind of get tricked by that, where you think, oh, this is simple. It's a simple pH problem, but I have to do all this math in order to get there. That takes time. Maybe I could have gone and answered, 2 other questions in that amount of time. So bear that in mind as you're working through.
How do you deal with, or what do you tell students when they see this question and they immediately freeze because they're like, uh-oh,
Mhm.
math. I'm not sure I like math. Um, just the idea of math on the MCAT in general.
Yeah. In terms of not freezing up.
Yeah, freezing up, some reassurance about the math. I don't know.
I
Just
mean,
math on the MCAT scares people.
yeah, math on the MCAT scares people, and this is what I always remind people of is that there's no calculator on the MCAT,
Yep.
which means the math can't be that hard.
Yep.
Right? It's not. It's. I mean, you're not being tested, right? You're not being tested on your significant digits like you would be in a chem class, right? You're not being
Yep.
tested on overly complicated math. It always comes down to formulas that you should know about, or that you should know. I think the other side of it is to actually use the units to your advantage, right? You're solving in this example, you're solving for molar, which means you know that molar is moles per liter. So right there you go, okay, I don't see moles written down anywhere in the question, but I can solve for that, right? I can solve for that using the numbers that, or using the formulas and the numbers that I have. So
Okay. Oh, question that I don't know if this is related. Any helpful mnemonic for remembering what properties define a reproducing kernel Hilbert space?
none that come to mind, unfortunately. So yeah.
Honestly, that's actually a good thing for ChatGPT, because ChatGPT is
Yeah.
good for that kind of like random ideation of things.
Yeah.
Um, I want to go put it in a
No,
ChatGPT.
yeah, I'm yeah.
ChatGPT. Let's see. Um, here.
But
So I'll share my
it's not
screen.
on the MCAT. That's also what I'm like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's see. Window. Here.
I mean, have you seen that question about that on the MCAT?
I don't
It's,
even know what it is.
I mean, I'm like, yeah, that's not an MCAT.
Yeah. But this is actually ChatGPT is good for this kind of stuff. I love ideating with ChatGPT about names and abbreviations, not mnemonics, acronyms, all that kind of stuff. Sweet. What else? Are there any cool new ways to utilize AI to study for the MCAT? Student-facing stuff. I know there are lots of Q banks out there that are spinning up that are AI focused, and it's like, hey, sign up for our Q bank and generate as many questions as you want. Petros, you and I have played with this kind of stuff. What's the drawback of a student going to ChatGPT and saying, make me a biochem passage?
Yeah, ChatGPT, I mean AI in general, right? But
Yeah.
ChatGPT specifically or whatever is only it's only as smart as the information that it can find and that it thinks it can find. And I'll give you, I think, a very classic example. If there is misinformation out there, or if there is correct information out there that is misinterpreted or conflated together, then ChatGPT effectively starts to make stuff up. So we were playing around with this at one point. I don't know, right? If you remember this, but there was a problem. It was a physics problem. ChatGPT is not, and
Mm.
AI generally is not
Yeah.
great at like physicsy
And
stuff.
I remember you were looking at it going, there's just something off here. I'm
Yeah,
not sure what it is, but
yeah.
something's off.
So yeah, that's what it is. There was a question about, I think it was centripetal force, if I remember correctly,
Mm.
and I did the classic thing where I looked at the question and I solved it without looking at the answer choice. I was like, I'm going to use my knowledge, I'm going to solve it, and the answer that I got wasn't one of the answer choices. And so I was like, that's odd. Like, did I miss something? And I'm not. I'll be frank. Like, I don't hate physics. I don't, but at the same time, I'm not doing physics every day. So I reached out to a buddy of mine who's a physicist. So I was like, like, can you do this problem and just tell me? And he's like, sure. And so he texts me back like 3 minutes later or whatever, and gives me the same exact answer that I had gotten. I was like, all right, so like I'm, my N of 1 or whatever as far as proofing is concerned. And then I sent him the explanation that had been given to me. And I was like, yeah, this is what it's saying, which I don't think is right. And he's like, no, this is completely wrong. So where I'm going with this is, then I did some digging and I found on the internet where it had pulled the information from. And it had pulled the information from an article which kind of had conflated multiple things together, essentially, is what it comes down to. All that is to say, Ariel, as far as your question is concerned, AI is good in terms of like content and all that. I think you're safer with something like Wikipedia. There continues to need to be, there continues the need to have, so what I want to say, the kind of the human fact checking that comes out, at the end of the day. So bottom line is, tell me if I'm wrong when I say this. I don't want AI to be solving my medical issues, right? So like that's the there's
Right now.
that right now. Yeah, exactly. Maybe in like 5. If AI is listening, I'll be totally fine with you solving my medical issues in like 10 years. So, but
I believe in you. I'm just
I
not ready
believe in
for
you. I always believed in you.
Don't come at me. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I think that's the answer. Is there are no shortage of websites that are spinning up QBanks and other tools for AI. The question is, how accurate are they? And so I think there are ways to use AI to help. But yeah, it comes down to a lot of fact checking and figuring out where to go with that. I was just looking at a flashcard builder where you highlight a bunch of text from like a Wikipedia article or from a textbook if you have a PDF version, and you throw that text into a flashcard builder, and AI creates 50 flashcards for you or whatever it is you want, right? From tools like that, I think are great, again, as long as the data it's pulling is accurate and the flashcard format is worthwhile. I think you and I were at a session together about flashcards and studying in medical school and STEP and all that kind of stuff. And one of the professors is like, flashcards are great, and here's how they can be improved. So, yeah, awesome, good questions. Keep asking them. Love it. You're right next to the window.
I am, and I am like, part of me wants to change the blinds so they're pointing upwards because the sun totally moved and I forgot that it was going to move. Because
yeah, go for it. All right, keep asking your questions and we'll keep answering them as best as possible. Again, Petros, 25 plus years of experience in the MCAT and pre-med space. Formerly at Kaplan, now here at medical school headquarters, guiding all of you, hopefully to better MCAT scores. So, welcome back.
I think that helped.
Oh yeah.
It's also not right in my eyes, which is
it helps.
Helps quite a bit.
That's good. Yep. All right. What else? What else do we need to know? Tonight you're doing a workshop.
Yeah, we're doing a workshop.
A little
tonight.
Selfish promotion. What's the workshop tonight for?
The workshop tonight is to give a preview to everybody about our new winter immersive program, which is starting on December 17th. So that is tonight at 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 Central. I guess 5 p.m. Pacific, technically. 6 p.m. your time, right? Mountain time.
What time in Hawaii?
3 o'clock in the afternoon. So that's the Alaska's at 4. So if we want to cover the whole, the whole spectrum, 50. So that's tonight. We're gonna basically, it's really going to be more Q&A, so questions that students have about the winter immersive, and kind of give a preview of what it's going to look like. I'll give the preview here. Winter immersive is very much going to be a problem-based learning series of sessions. So this will happen over the period of time between December 17th and January 13th. So really, if you're testing in January or even February, it would be a opportunity to really kind of get a lot of exposure to dissecting passages and questions and really kind of getting the ins and outs of what you need to be doing and not be doing. So imagine kind of early days will be more the dissections, and then as we kind of build throughout the period of time, more and more kind of work on your own and analysis and guided practice as we're going through. For students who are testing later, so March, April, even May, it can be a jumpstart. So bottom line is we wanted to create an opportunity for students to be able to best utilize their winter breaks. It's cold outside, right? Not a whole lot to do. Maybe you don't want to be spending too much time with your friends and family. So you got the MCAT rolling around in January. So what better way to spend it than with other folks who are in the same boat? So we have a nice cohort that's together, and we'll be adding more over the course of the next couple of weeks. So that's what Winter Immersive is going to be. And we'll have a session tonight to talk all about that.
Nice. I put a link there, and then I'll put a link to the Winter Immersive as well. And of course, I got the website because that's what I do, winterimmersive.com. All right. Question here from Rosny, 2002. I'm in the process of prepping for the MCAT. How can your service contribute to my success? Oh, what a setup question. Let me count the ways. But
so many ways.
The Winter Immersive you just talked about, we do one-on-one tutoring as well. We do the pre-med office hours or MCAT office hours here on Tuesdays. Where can a person start with us?
I mean, I think really the place to start is, I mean, you're here, so great as far as step number one. Step number two is come to one of our events. You can set up a consult with me if you want to talk through your specific situation as far as when you're preparing. There is I put a QR. There's a QR code there. So there, you can click on that or go to mshqconsult.com. So yeah, we can talk about what, kind of what your needs are when you're testing, all the ins and outs, and figuring out how we can help you. I think the big thing that really defines how we do things here at MSHQ, which is very different from how the big test prep companies do it, is we are extremely student centric. So much so that we effectively build the study plan and the work that you need to be doing around your individual needs. No two students are ever alike. We're not trying to do the thing where we say, everybody do this on day one, everybody do this on day two, and poof, magically your score is going to improve. That's not how it works. Like I'm going to sound like a grumpy old man. I've been doing this for a long time, right? That's not how it works. It sounds real good on paper, right? It sounds real good on like a marketing message. Oh, I'm going to guarantee you a certain score improvement. You read the real fine print, you realize, oh, that's like, 30 students that happen to do these things in this order and precisely, tippy-toed around, X, Y, and Z. That's not how we work. The way that we work is we work with the students based on their needs, build out the efficiencies, and quite frankly, figure out kind of what resources you truly actually need, right? It'd be a great marketing message if I came to you and said, we have 20,000 questions or 10,000 questions. Like, I need 10,000. You don't have time to do 10,000 questions. I'm going to tell you that point blank. Like, that's a waste of your time. So We'll help you figure out and get that realism. It's back to what I was saying earlier, right? The student I spoke to was like, I'm going to do 15 full-length exams. And I was like, pause there, So that's the long answer to your short question. So.
Yep. Opinion on getting a BSN degree. This question's a lot more appropriate for pre-med office hours, which is tomorrow at 1 p.m. But in general, it's a waste of time if your ultimate goal is to go to medical school. I think a lot of people do it as a plan B. Well, just in case I don't get into medical school, then I'll have a nursing degree to fall back on. The problem is that the nursing degree is a distraction for going to medical school. So I would not recommend it. And I think most of our team wouldn't either. And I know nurses that are like, no, don't do that. The nursing degree is a little bit more unique in that there's a lot of nursing specific stuff that you have to do. So.
My primary care provider is a nurse practitioner. She never wanted to go to med school. She was like, I always wanted to be a nurse, and it's a completely different path, right?
Here's an interesting question. What content on the MCAT directly applies the best to medical school itself? Petros, I'll answer this and I'll see what you think.
I should cover my ears so that we see how close or how far apart our responses are.
No, I don't know. I having gone to medical school, the MCAT has no relevance to medical school other than it really challenges you to think, to be a strong critical thinker, right? Doing well on Chem Phys doesn't mean you're going to crush any sort of courses in your medical school class that have anything to do with chemistry or physics. It's the thought process and the discipline and the critical thinking and all that stuff. The content itself is, medical school. It's a whole nother level, right? We often talk about Petros mile wide and an inch deep for the MCAT. Medical school is a mile wide and a mile deep.
it's like probably 10 miles deep, right? It's the 10 miles wide. I will agree with most of your statement, but I'll just throw one thing out there that is forgotten sometimes. So yes, the critical thinking skills, absolutely. We have to remind ourselves, though, that the MCAT exists not as an entrance exam. It exists as an exam to assess on a standardized metric a student's readiness to undertake the medical school curriculum, which is a mile wide and a mile deep, or 10 miles wide and 10 miles deep, right? Like that's the thing, because I will challenge anyone and including you in this. If you hadn't learned the chemistry, you would have been lost on day one with the biochem that they're teaching you in med school, right? Like that's the. I mean, there's some basic things, and we forget that familiarity, right? Like even when you get into upper division coursework, in undergrad, you forget that, oh yeah, I'm familiar with this information. I'm not thinking about it. So it's, but it's that they want to make sure that you're ready. In some countries, med school is 6 years because they start you off with general biology and general chemistry, and right, they start you off with what we call the pre-med requirements. So but so I'm agreeing with you, but I'll just throw that in there that it's
the science is still important.
Science is still important, right? The science, the science is the science. I actually have a question for you. You didn't have to take a behavioral sciences section when you took the MCAT. So did you feel less prepared in med school when you had to do that work, right? Or those subjects?
No, and I think that's to my point is
that's where I'm going with.
I think undergrad, I think there's some basic fundamentals that carry over. But at the end of the day, you are starting at zero in medical school. And what carries over the most is your study habits and your discipline and your passion and drive and motivation. It's not, oh, I'm so glad I took that Chem 101 course
Yeah.
4 years ago because this is all the same stuff. Like, no, it's not. So yeah, I didn't feel like I was behind. And I don't even remember. I have my transcripts somewhere. I have my AMCAS application somewhere around here. But I don't think I ever took like a psychology or sociology
Yeah.
course
Yeah.
in general. So yeah, but I made it.
Yes, you did.
Chronic scopes. What if you're already a nurse? I have an AA and I'm planning to get a BSN. Again, like if your plan is to go to medical school, don't waste your time getting a BSN. Go do your med school prereqs. So yeah. I don't know if the question, chronic scopes, is that you're asking, will being a nurse help me get into medical school? Because it's like, oh, this person was a nurse and now they want to go to medical. I wouldn't think about it that way. All right, friends. I think we have come to the end of another MCAT office hours. We are here Tuesdays at 4 p.m. Eastern. We have a couple more weeks until we kind of hit the holidays, and then we'll take a little break. So I think we have 2 more weeks, and then we'll take 2 weeks off before coming back after the new year. So come hang out with us Tuesdays, and then Wednesdays we have pre-med office hours at 1 p.m. Eastern. Same place, different time. Same bat channel, different bat time, as it was not said back in the day. That's dating me, Petros. I'm sure you're familiar with that saying. Everyone have a wonderful day. Again, our winter immersive, our MCAT winter immersive starting on the 17th, winterimmersive.com. We have a workshop tonight talking all about it. You can come check that out. Thank you, everyone, for coming, hanging out. See you soon. Bye-bye.